When Dolly Parton met this determined young boy, his sad eyes revealed only a darkness no story could fathom. In his class studying alone, it seemed he carried with him the burden of so much heartbreak. After getting close to him, she realized he had lived almost a full life. She was more than a listening ear, and he managed to build a successful life for himself. Years later, the boy, now a doctor, writes Dolly Parton a letter that will break your heart and heal it all at once. If you've ever doubted the power of kindness, this story will restore your faith. Stay with us and let your heart witness what happens when compassion meets determination. Soft rays of sunlight filtered through lace curtains, casting a golden hue across the cozy room. Dolly Parton sat at her vintage writing desk, still in her morning robe, a cup of steaming tea in hand. A neat stack of letters awaited her attention, but one envelope, hand-addressed and carefully sealed, caught her eye. She opened it gently and it read, "Dear Dolly Parton, I'm writing this not just as a doctor, but as the boy you once found buried in a book while the world played outside. You believed in me when no one else did. When I had nothing but dreams and pain, you gave me hope, a future. And because of you, I didn't just become a doctor. I became a better brother too. Finding my sister again was a miracle. Giving her the chance to study nursing because of your support was a blessing. You didn't just help me chase my dream, you helped me bring my family back together. There are no words big enough for the gratitude I carry. You were my light when everything was dark. I will carry your kindness in my heart for the rest of my life. With all my love and thanks, Ethan." "You did it, boy. You really did it," Dolly Parton whispered to herself. She placed the letter gently on her chest, closed her eyes, and smiled through the tears as she went down memory lane. How it all began. It was supposed to be just another community school visit for Dolly Parton. She was visiting a local school, hoping to find inspiration for her next country music project, maybe even speak to a few kids about chasing their dreams. Dolly Parton, the beloved country music legend, was walking through a modest school in rural Tennessee, looking to connect with young hearts as it seemed to be the only way she could deal with the next music project she took up. The schoolyard buzzed with life, sunlight dancing off skipping ropes, sneakers pounding against the chalky ground, and shouts of joy ringing through the crisp morning air. Laughter bounced from corner to corner as young boys and girls dashed across the yard in colorful bursts, chasing soccer balls, playing tag, or inventing games only they could understand. It was a picture of innocence and freedom, a perfect Tennessee morning, just like the ones Dolly remembered from her own childhood in the Smoky Mountains. As she strolled through the playground toward the classroom blocks, a warm breeze rustled the leaves overhead, and a small group of girls jumped double dutch, their voices singing out an old rhyme. One of them was humming a tune, one of Dolly's. She smiled. For a moment, she wasn't Dolly Parton, the icon. She was just Dolly, the barefoot little girl who once ran wild in the hills, her hair tangled in the wind, with dreams bigger than her tiny front porch. Her eyes sparkled with nostalgia, and her heart ached softly with a joy so rare because she saw her past in those kids. She saw the freedom they all enjoyed, the dreams and the simplicity they shared, but just as she turned the corner past the laughter, something changed. Something quietly pulled her attention. Through the dusty window of a sunlit classroom, Dolly Parton saw him. One boy, alone, his head bowed, a pencil in hand, furiously scribbling across a worn workbook. His tiny frame barely moved, even as laughter echoed just outside. He was still, focused, and unmoved by the joy surrounding him. And in an instant, that warmth in her chest gave way to curiosity and concern. Drawn by something she couldn't quite explain, Dolly took a slow step toward the classroom window. The lively sounds behind her began to fade, replaced by the soft hum of the school's old air conditioning unit and the faint scratching of a pencil on paper. She peered in gently, careful not to cast a shadow that might startle him. There he was, a small boy, no older than 13 years, hunched slightly over his desk. His dark hair was a little messy, his backpack hung open beside him, but his focus was unshakable. His eyes scanned the page with a quiet intensity, absorbing, underlining, jotting notes. He didn't flinch, didn't look up. He seemed entirely unaware that joy and chaos played just beyond the walls around him. Dolly's heart stirred. There was something rare about him, an old soul behind those young eyes, a storm of purpose inside that still frame. She stepped back, blinking against the emotion welling in her chest. Then without a word, she turned and made her way around the block, her boots clicking softly against the concrete walkway. As she reached the classroom entrance, her fingers brushed the faded door frame. She paused, then gently she pushed it open. It creaked. The boy was startled. His eyes, they weren't like the others. They were deep, not with age, but with a quiet weight most children never carried. Dolly Parton stepped into the classroom and with her warm smile asked, "Honey, why aren't you out there having fun with the others?" Ethan looked up, his eyes intelligent but wary. He hesitated, then softly replied, "Ma'am," he said, "I want to be a doctor. I want to learn everything I can because I don't want to see families broken like mine." Dolly Parton smiled, but the next words Ethan spoke shattered her heart. "My dad died from cancer when I was 7, and my mom, she died too. She worked too hard after she got involved in a car accident just to feed me and my sister. She never rested. One fateful night, she went to bed like she does every other day, but just didn't wake up." Tears trailed down his cheeky face as he talked. His father had died from cancer when Ethan was barely old enough to understand it. Not long after, his mother, who was working 2 jobs to care for them, get involved in a car accident. She survived the crash, but not the endless shifts she returned to just weeks later. The grief had barely begun to settle when Ethan was separated from his baby sister, Samantha. "They split me and Samantha up after my mom's death. Said her foster home didn't have space for me. I haven't seen her in 5 years, but I keep studying, 'cause maybe one day I can find a way to stop the kind of sickness that took my dad away from me. And maybe I can make enough fortune to help me find my sister and bring her back," Ethan continued. Dolly knelt beside him. Her jaw tightened. "I'm so sorry, young lad." Ethan looked away, trying to stay strong. Can you imagine carrying this much weight on your shoulders at just 13 years old? If you believe this boy deserves a chance, drop a heart in the comments. Dolly's eyes welled, but Ethan wasn't done. "My friends laugh at me. They say I'll never be a doctor. Even some teachers tell me to aim lower. They don't think someone like me could ever make it, but I don't want to stop dreaming, even if I'm dreaming alone." Ethan kept on explaining, "But I don't care. I want to cure cancer, and I want to help families stay together." And at that moment, Dolly Parton made a silent vow. Dolly didn't say a word for a long time. She just looked at him, this brave boy with a broken past and an unshakable will. Her heart was heavy, but her mind was clear. She leaned down, she placed a gentle hand on his back, struggling to find the right words, but one thing rang clear in her heart. "You're not dreaming alone anymore, sweetheart," she whispered. "I'm going to help you make it." She had no idea just how far this promise would take them. She smiled through tears. Ethan, stunned, could only nod, as if too afraid to believe her just yet. But from that day forward, everything began to change. Ethan never missed a chance to write to Dolly Parton. His letters had become more than updates. They were windows into a journey neither of them could have ever predicted. With every milestone, every exam passed, he felt a surge of pride, not just for himself, but for the woman who believed in him when the world didn't. He told her about the jeers from classmates, the cold dismissals from teachers, but they didn't hurt like they used to. Not anymore. Because deep within him, something stronger than pain had taken root. Belief, not just in himself, but in the truth that he was never walking alone. By the time high school came to an end, Ethan stood tall, literally and figuratively, as valedictorian of his class. The same orphan boy who was once ridiculed for dreaming too big now stood behind a podium, facing those very voices that had tried to silence him. His speech struck hearts like lightning. "They laughed at me when I said that I want to become a doctor. They said kids like me don't get that far, but today I stand here not just as your top student, but as a reminder that when fate blesses you with a hand to hold, you hold on and you rise. To every voice that said I couldn't, thank you, because I just did." As Ethan stepped down from the podium, the auditorium was frozen in stunned silence. His final words still echoed in the hearts of everyone seated. For a brief moment, no one moved. Then a thunderous applause erupted, stronger, deeper, and far more emotional than any speech before his. Some of the teachers who once advised Ethan to aim lower now sat with misty eyes, exchanging silent, regretful glances. One of them, Mrs. Davenport, who had once told him his dream of becoming a doctor was unrealistic, stood with her hand over her chest, visibly moved, whispering under her breath, "I was wrong." Among the students, there was awe and humility. Jake, one of the class's top students who had once ridiculed Ethan behind his back, looked down at his shoes, ashamed. He clapped slowly, then stood, joining the others. Emma, a girl from his math class, wiped a tear from her cheek. She leaned over to a friend and whispered, "He didn't just graduate. He rose from ashes." Even Principal Thompson, a man known for his firm, composed demeanor, stepped forward and shook Ethan's hand firmly. "You didn't just graduate with honors, son. You taught us all a lesson in perseverance." From the back of the hall, someone started chanting, "Ethan! Ethan! Ethan!" Soon the entire class joined in, their voices echoing with respect, not just for the student who graduated top of the class, but for the orphaned boy who defied the odds, held on to hope, and became a symbol of what grit, grace, and support can truly achieve. Ethan persevered and rose right before everyone that did not believe in his dream. Even though he was yet to be a doctor, graduating top of his class was a step closer to it. Thanks to Dolly Parton, Ethan secured a full scholarship to university. His name got inscribed onto the campus roll of one of the most prestigious schools in the country. At university, Ethan was thriving. He had climbed past every low expectation ever set for him, surpassing students who once scoffed at the idea of a foster kid achieving anything. And when he walked into lecture halls or aced his clinical rotations, it wasn't pride he felt, it was gratitude. But life had one more twist waiting. It was just another long evening of back-to-back lectures, and Ethan, drained from a lab exam, decided to grab a quick bite. A small diner just off campus, warm light spilling from its windows, called to him like a lighthouse in the fog. The evening air was crisp, and the cozy scent of grilled food and spices drifted through the small restaurant. Ethan slid into a corner booth near the window, tired from a long day of lectures and labs. He ran a hand through his hair and glanced at the menu. With a soft sigh, he ordered a light meal from the waiter and settled into the warm hum of clinking glasses and quiet chatter. The restaurant felt familiar, almost like a memory trying to whisper itself back into his heart. As he absentmindedly stirred his glass of water, a figure emerged from the kitchen. She was petite, with a hurried grace in her steps and a tray in her hands. Her hair was pulled into a neat bun, and though her face was partially turned away, there was something hauntingly familiar about her. She didn't look his way. Her focus was on a family sitting 2 tables across. Ethan's breath caught in his chest. His heart skipped. His mind raced. He tilted his head slightly, squinting through the low light. Could it be Samantha, his baby sister? No, it couldn't. But something about the way she moved and her profile gave him double thoughts. He stood up slowly, unsure of himself, taking a few hesitant steps toward her. And just as he was about to call out, she turned to head back toward the kitchen, and their eyes locked. Time froze. The tray slipped slightly in her hand, but she caught it. Her eyes widened in disbelief. A beat of silence passed. Then she called out. Before Ethan could respond, she let out a cry and sprinted toward him, dropping the tray onto a nearby table. "Ethan!" Her voice cracked with emotion. Ethan didn't speak. He opened his arms just as Samantha flung herself into them. They held each other like the world would fall apart if they let go. Tears poured freely from both their eyes, soaking into each other's shoulders. The chatter in the restaurant died down as nearby patrons turned to watch, unsure of the story unfolding, but instinctively knowing it was something beautiful. Samantha wept into his chest. "I thought I'd never see you again," she sobbed. Ethan held her tighter, his voice breaking. "I've looked everywhere for you, Sam. I never stopped." And there, in that tiny restaurant filled with strangers and noise, 2 siblings found their home again, not in a place, but in each other. The little girl he hadn't seen in years, now standing before him, apron tied around her waist, fatigue shadowing her once bright eyes. The moment stilled. Tears came fast. From both sides, words tumbled, pain resurfaced, joy crashed into sorrow. Moments like this remind us of the power of hope, the strength of love, and the miracle of reunion. Share this video if this touched your heart even a little. They sat down in a booth tucked in the corner. She told him everything. How the foster home she landed in didn't support her education. How she aged out of the system without guidance. How she found a job at the diner, working double shifts just to survive. She had stopped dreaming long ago because dreams felt like a luxury. Ethan listened, devastated. He tried to smile, to be strong, but his appetite vanished. His soup sat untouched, growing cold. As she spoke, all he saw was the little girl with bright eyes whom he used to braid grass bracelets for. Now worn, exhausted, and struggling to stay afloat. They sat together until closing time. Before they parted, Ethan made her a promise. "I'm not letting you go again. Not ever. I'll fix this. I swear." That night, he returned to his dorm with a heart heavy as stone. He couldn't sleep. He stared at the ceiling of his dorm, questions gnawing at his soul. How could he live his dream knowing his sister had none? How could he become a doctor if she never got the chance to even try becoming something? By morning, the decision burned inside him. He sat at his desk and wrote to Dolly with a shaking pen and a heart torn in two. "Dear Dolly Parton, I found Samantha. I didn't even know if I ever would, but I did. She's been through so much. I can't focus on my future while hers crumbles. I want to drop out and work to put her through school. I know you've already done more than I could ever ask for, and wouldn't want to bother you more with our issues, but I can't leave her behind again. I just don't want her to be left behind anymore. I hope you understand. Thank you for everything. Ethan." He folded the letter with trembling hands and mailed it the same day. What he didn't know was that letter would change everything again. He thought he had to choose between his dream and his sister. But Dolly Parton had other plans. Would you give up your dream to protect someone you love? Hit the like button if you believe family always comes first. Dolly sat quietly in her reading nook, holding Ethan's letter in trembling hands. The moment her eyes met his words, her heart swelled. She remembered that determined little boy, sitting alone in a classroom while the world danced outside. Now he was a man, on the edge of giving it all up. Not for himself, but for his sister. She didn't wait. The very next morning, Dolly stepped onto the university campus, flanked by the same calm determination that had carried her through decades of music, film, and philanthropy. She asked the receptionist for Ethan and waited near the grand oak tree in the courtyard where students milled about, heads buried in books and backpacks slung over shoulders. Ethan appeared, clearly stunned. His steps faltered as he saw her. She was the last person he expected, yet the only one he truly needed. Before he could speak, Dolly stepped forward, her voice laced with emotion. "Ethan James Carter, don't you dare quit on yourself." His lips quivered. "I didn't want to disappoint you or burden you any further." Dolly's eyes softened. She reached out, cupping his face in her hands like a mother would a son. "You've never been a burden. Not then, not now. You were chosen for a reason. I didn't invest in you out of pity, Ethan. I believe in you. You're not just a student. You're a miracle in motion. Let me help both of you, please." At that, Ethan's composure shattered. He fell into her arms, sobbing. Samantha's face appeared in his mind, and with it came a flood of memories. Those of abandonment, longing, and now reunion. Together, they cried beneath the oak tree. Around them, the noise of the university faded. In that moment, it was just them. Two souls connected by purpose, pain, and boundless love. Years later, the gleaming white corridors of St. Mary's Hospital echoed with the steady rhythm of professionalism. Nurses passed charts, pagers beeped faintly in the background, and amidst the gentle chaos stood Ethan, now Dr. Ethan Carter. His posture was strong, his voice calm, and his eyes carried the same fire Dolly once saw in a quiet classroom all those years ago. Today's case was delicate. A dear friend of Dolly's had been admitted with a rare illness. Without knowing this detail beforehand, Ethan had taken the lead on the case. When Dolly arrived, she was met with the sight of her miracle boy stepping out of the operating room, mask lowered and the satisfied calm of success across his face. Her heart swelled. Later that evening, Samantha, now a nursing student, joined her brother during his break for lunch. Her nurturing nature radiated in every interaction. She had become the very image of compassion, a reflection of the future Ethan had once dreamed for them both. In a quiet lounge room, Dolly Parton walked in to see Dr. Ethan and his sister having lunch. She embraced them again, tears brimming in her eyes. "You didn't just survive," she whispered. "You've become the reason others will too." Sometimes the seeds we plant bloom into legacies far beyond what we imagined. And sometimes one act of kindness can rewrite two destinies. Share this video with your friends because stories like Ethan's aren't just meant to be watched. They're meant to be felt, remembered, and passed on. There's more where this came from. Subscribe to discover another powerful story that will stir your soul.